Hello, and welcome to Look Smarter Than You Are with Time Ordinal Conditioning in OBIEE. My name is Krajewski. I'm a consultant with interRel Consulting, and I'm happy to share one of my favorite tips when it comes to rolling time periods when creating analyses in OBIEE. Why time ordinal conditioning? It really helps when you want to roll your time periods, which there's always a request for at least one, if not many more reports when we're dealing with dashboarding. What I love about time ordinal conditioning is the fact that I can use variables to change my starting point at any time. And when I put it in a dashboard, I use my dashboard prompts to populate those variables for even greater flexibility. Time ordinal conditioning works great, but there are a couple of requirements that we have to meet in order to use it. So here are the requirements that I mentioned. And again, I'm talking about SBASE and OBIEE, my two favorite passions. So I am assuming that you have a dimension tagged as time. If not, time ordinal conditioning will not be an option inside OBIEE. Just as SBASE uses the time and accounts dimension for special functions, OBIEE recognizes the time and accounts dimension tags as well. And in this case, the time tag is what opens up and allows us to use those time ordinal conditions. You won't see this option available for dimensions that don't have the time tag. Also, you have to use a hierarchical column. That's what's going to allow us to roll. It's going to go up or down the hierarchy depending how we set the conditions. And in this case, if you need to cross years, which is always a requirement, it is recommended that years are in the same dimension as periods. It's going to make your life so much easier. And I know that's a big no-no from an SBASE design perspective. Normally, I'm an SBASE person and I kind of cringe when they put years in with the periods. Oh, it's never done. This is a reporting cube, hopefully. So if we need to do a lot of rolling of time periods, this makes perfect sense and will make our lives so much easier. So trust me on this one. It can be done and it does work. There are two time ordinal conditions to choose from. The first one is labeled with a strange name, 6 months starting with Jan 98, and the other is last 3 months. So the biggest difference between them really is the 6-month option allows you to specify where in the hierarchy you basically want to start. You may not want to start at January or December and roll. You may want to start at April, let's say, if that's where your fiscal year is, or that's where your actuals start, or your forecast starts, or whatever particular condition you're trying to meet. So I will tell you quite honestly, I almost always exclusively use the 6-month option just because it really does all the rolling that I need and just gives me greater flexibility. The last 3 months truly is going to just roll from this first period in the quarter or the month that you select. So it rolls and it does a job. It just doesn't allow the flexibility of selecting that very specific starting point. Now I think it's time to see time ordinal conditioning in action. So let me go ahead and demo how to work with time ordinal conditioning using the sample basic database. For purposes of this demo, I am using OBIEE 11.1.1.9, but this functionality is in all versions of OBIEE all the way up to 12C. So I'm going to create a new analysis from the new menu, choosing analysis, and the subject area I'm selecting is sample basic database. My SBASE database that was imported into the repository. For this particular database, the year dimension was tagged with the time tag. So I'm opening up the year folder and I'm selecting the year hierarchical column. For this particular example, this is the only column that I'll use. But know that this works no matter how many columns you have in the report. I'm going to click now on the Results tab to take a look. So here we are in the Results screen, and if you'll notice there is my year hierarchical column, and at the very bottom of the screen are the selection steps. The selection steps are where I will go to set the conditions. If you don't see your selection steps, go up to the toolbar, and the very last icon is your Show Hide Selection Steps. Simply click it, and the selection steps should open up for you. I'm going to expand year for just a second because we're going to try and roll our time periods, and I'll open up quarter 2. So it's important before you obviously start rolling or try and create any analyses in OBIEE that you have some idea of the underlying database structure. So in this case, we can clearly see that our year dimension starts out with the label year, it then goes to quarters, and then to months. For this particular example, I'm going to roll the months. I'm going to start with May, and I want to read up in the outline. So I want actually January through May, and I'm going to roll that a little bit differently by going up the outline. I'm going to expand my selection steps to take a look. So when I add a condition, it's always as an additional step to whatever selection steps are already here. So for example, for my year dimension, I'm starting with all members, and then in step 2, I'll click on the Then New Step option. I'm going to select Apply a Condition from the menu. My condition type, because this is the dimension tagged with the time tag in Essbase, comes through the repository into OBIEE, I have the time ordinal conditioning options. And you know my favorite now is the 6 months starting with Jan 98, so that's the condition I'm going to select. In the action drop-down, notice that I can add to existing members, I can keep only the members I'm about to select, I can remove the members I'm about to select. I'm going to select Keep Only. And I'm going to roll for 5 months. And this is the really cool part, the override. That's what I love. So here's where I can override whatever selection I'm about to set in this condition with a presentation variable, especially helpful in a dashboard where a user can come in, select a time period, set the value of a presentation variable, and completely change the role of the report. Or they can use a session variable that's assigned when they log in for this particular session, or a repository variable, which can be your Essbase substitution variables. That's how those come in. They're labeled as repository variables here. So if you have per month set, every month the report will automatically update and roll as expected without any additional work on your part. For this particular example, to keep it super simple, we're not going to play with the presentation variables or any of the variables for right now, but know that they are there and truly make this just a wonderful experience from a user perspective. So from the drop-down menu, you might say, hey, when I look at this, I see Gen 2 year, Gen 3 year, Gen 1, whatever it is, instead of these weird names that Carol's seeing right now. So here's the difference. In Essbase, names were assigned to the generations for my particular database. So OBIEE picks up those generation names and carries them all the way through. So that's a recommendation, is that you do name your generations where possible. In this particular example, we're rolling the months, so I'll select months. And I want to read up the outline, so I'm going to eventually choose is ending with, but notice that I can do the starting with a particular month in this case, which would mean I would read down the outline. Ending with is going to read up the outline, stopping with the member that I select. I can also use a is before or after option. So months, 5 months after February, 3 months after June, whatever it might be. So in this case, I'm going to do the ending with and then select my starting point, which will be May. So there are my selections. I'm keeping only 5 months, ending with May. So in this particular example, it'll be January through May. Click OK, and you'll notice immediately the results of my selections. Time ordinal conditioning can really simplify when you need those rolling time periods in an analysis. Thanks for watching. Please join us again.